So now we're going to move on to adding the roof assembly to the precast concrete structure. It's going to be a very similar process, but there are a few differences. For one thing, I'm going to go to the architecture tab and the floor and go to the architectural floor. We are going to use, instead of a 6.5 inch roof insulation layer, a 7.5 inch one. So what I had done was to edit this type. I made a duplicate. I called the duplicate 7.5 inches. And then I went and edited the structure so that the thickness is 7.5. So I'm going to click on that and I'll show you. So this is the new name, edit, and it's 7.5 inches thick. Now the reason we need to go with a thicker insulation assembly here is because we're trying to achieve a certain R value for the whole thickness of the roof assembly, and the wood structure of the mass timber structure here on the right has a higher, the wood material has a higher R value than the concrete hollow core slabs. So to make up for it, we're using a little bit more insulation here. I'm going to create a rectangle from this location over to here. And again, this is using the 7.5 inch thickness, and I'm going to click on the check mark. Okay, so I'm going to get this overlap, highlighted floors overlap warning, and I will go ahead and make the correction, but let's go ahead and do that before we do some more work with the drains. When I zoom in here and I select, you got to be careful to tab until you select the floor insulation level. I just need to raise it up so it's not overlapping. So it's going to sit on top of the hollow core slabs. Right, then I'll go back to level 3. And so that I know where to put the drains, I'm going to go back to the wireframe view just for a moment. So here are my hollow core slabs running north-south. I have some precast girders that are running in the east-west direction. Basically, I'll center the drain from left to right between the column grids, the same way I did the other one. And for the location north to south, I just need to clear these girders. So I'm going to put it about 2 feet above this column line. All right, so I'll go back to the hidden line visual style. I'm going to click on that roof assembly, the 7.5 inch thick one, and I'm going to add a point. I'm going to put that point right here in the middle. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to modify the sub-element. Click on it. One change I'm going to make is I'm going to move it down. This one will go down to 24 feet 5 inches, and that will give me enough pitch. Oops, it didn't accept that. 24 feet 5 inches, enter. And then what I'm going to do while I'm still modifying that sub-element is move it over 12.5 feet. And I'll move it again 2 feet up. I'm going to add a second point, the center. Same thing here, modify sub-elements. I will pick up maybe they're both picked right now. Okay, so make sure I'm selecting just the one. And I'll change that height to the 24 feet 5 inches. And then I'll continue to move it 12.5 feet. And move it down 2 feet. Okay. Only additional thing I need to do is to add the split line from the top here to the bottom. Okay, so now I should see these X's appear on the left and right sides. I'll click on edit boundary and the check mark, and that structure is done. Right now, this one is going to be another roof assembly, but it'll be different than the two on the right, because we're going to include the metal deck as part of the entire assembly for this one. Okay, so for the steel structure, like we had done before, we're going to create a new roof assembly, and we're going to put the drains in the space between the framing members. So I'm going to start by just measuring the distance here. These are 5 feet on center, so I'll put my drain 2.5 feet above this column line, and I'll center it similar to how I done the other ones. But for this one, we're going to go to the architecture tab and go to the floor assemblies. We will use a roof assembly similar to what had been made previously. This 2.5-inch lightweight concrete on 5.5-inch metal deck. We'll use that as a base. We're going to make a duplicate of this one as well. This is going to be called rigid insulation on 1.5-inch metal deck, and I don't really need this 2 here. I'm going to say okay. And to edit the structure, instead of concrete, I am going to use that rigid insulation layer. GID, it is, okay. And I've got the metal deck here. Instead of making the rigid insulation, in this case, the structural material, I'm going to move it here. And we're going to make the insulation the variable thickness element. This is going to be 7.5 inches. And I'm going to click on OK. Actually, let's make one revision to that. Let's edit this. Instead of just the rigid insulation, we need to account for the metal deck in this thickness. So it's 7.5 inches on top of the rigid insulation, on top of the metal deck, which is 1.5 inches. So 7.5 plus 1.5 is giving us this 9 inches. And I'm going to click on apply and OK. Right, and I will go ahead and, like I had done before, I will make a rectangle that sits on top of this roof. And I'll hit the check mark. Okay, I'm going to go to my section looking north, hand over to the steel structure. And in this case, I'm not going to raise it up 9 inches. I'm only going to do 7.5 because I want the metal deck to sit on top of these joists, and they're already dropped. So I'll go ahead and make this just 7.5 inches up, and they should sit correctly on top of the joists. Now, one thing you can see, as we had been working on with this slab, and I notice I need to switch that as well. I need to rotate my span so that I'm seeing the metal deck in cross section. So if you hadn't already, this is the level 2 metal deck, and we need to be able to see the profile from this view. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Click on it, edit the boundary. I'll go to level 3 to do this, and I just want to change the span direction so that the metal decking is running north to south. And let's just go back to the section here so you can see the profile now appears. Okay, so we'll add the drains the same way that we did the other ones. 2.5 feet above this one and 12.5 feet over. So I am going to add a point to the middle here. I'm going to modify that sub element. I'm going to change the height to 24 feet 5 inches, and I'm going to move it 12.5 feet over, and I'll move it 2.5 feet up. I'll add another point here and place it in the opposite location, modify sub-elements. Make sure you click on that one to make sure it's changing the correct one. And this number is different here because the slope was already added when I changed this one. So that's why it came in at 24 feet 5 and some weird fraction. Click here, move it over 12.5 feet, move it down 2.5 feet. I'll add the split line going down the middle. And edit the boundary with check mark. Okay, good time to save your file. All right, the last one that we're going to work on is the one with the waffle slab. So let's see, our visual style. You want to change it so it's wireframe so you can identify where these centers are. Now again, I don't want to come down where we have the fins of the waffle slab. I want to bring it down somewhere in the middle of one of these. So let's see here. If I made a copy of this structural grid, let's see, 12.5 feet over, it's not quite far enough. I want to locate it at the middle of this and another maybe 12 inches over. Let's move it and see how that looks. So this one would then end up being, 13.5 feet over, and the location from the center of one of these to my grid line it's about 1 foot 6 inches. Looks like 1 foot 5 and 5/8. So we'll go ahead and be precise about it, and we'll locate it 13.5 feet over and 1 foot 5 and 5/8 up. All right, so I'm going to go to the floor assemblies, and this time I'll reuse the roof insulation that's 7.5 inches. So this concrete waffle slab has roughly the same R value as the precast concrete. That's why we're using this one. I'm going to make a rectangle from the inside of the parapet here. I think it actually might be back by this. Let's change the visual style to hidden, or rather to wireframe, so we can see. Yeah, this is the face of the parapet wall. So that's where I want to begin my rectangle. And I'll zoom into here. Okay, hit the check mark. I'm going to get that same warning. Let's say don't attach. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to my section looking north. I'll pan over. And I will move this so that its height offset is 7.5. Go back to level 3. And I will add I'm going to change it back to the hidden line. And I'll start adding a point. Modify the sub element, click on that location. 24 feet 5 inches, like the other one. This one I'm going to move over 13.5 feet. So again, we're trying to get it located in the middle of a waffle slab section, 1 foot 5.625 inches. Okay, add a point, put it at the center, modify the sub element, drop it down to 24 feet 5 inches, and move it over the same distance to the left, 13.5 feet, and the same distance down, 1 foot 5.625. Right, we'll add the split line, so we have a high point running across the roof. Edit the boundary, check mark, don't attach. All right, so that is the extent of this work. I'm going to go to my 3D view, and you can see there are now these low slope roof assemblies sitting on top of each structure.